An innocent question from an 8-year-old girl silenced an entire town hall, prompting Donald Trump to share a deeply personal story about faith, loss, and redemption. What happened next left everyone in tears. The Church Fellowship Hall in Shreveport, Louisiana, was filled with the soft murmurs of conversation, the scraping of folding chairs against the polished floor adding to the ambience. This space, typically used for Sunday potlucks and Bible study, felt different that evening. At the front of the room stood Donald Trump, his unmistakable presence commanding the modest hall. His signature hand gestures and orange-tinted complexion were familiar to all, yet tonight, there was something different about him. He was unusually subdued, perhaps sensing the weight of the moment. Families, retirees, and local residents filled the audience, eager to hear what he had to say. But among them, one person stood out, not because of her size, but because of her quiet determination. 8-year-old Lily, dressed in her finest Sunday dress, clutched an old, leather-bound Bible against her chest. A treasure passed down from her late grandmother, its pages were worn, its gold lettering faded. Before they had arrived, her mother had whispered, "You can ask him, but only if you're brave enough, and only if you truly mean it." Lily had simply nodded, her heart pounding. For weeks, she had rehearsed her question, scribbling it in her notebook at recess, whispering it to herself as she lay in bed. It wasn't a question of mere curiosity, it was one that weighed on her heart. As the evening progressed, Trump spoke about his usual topics, policies, achievements, the future of America. The audience clapped occasionally, nodding in agreement, but the energy wasn't the same as his usual rallies. Lily waited, her small hands gripping the edges of her Bible more tightly with each passing minute. Finally, the floor opened for questions. A line quickly formed, adults eager to ask about local issues, national policies, and even offering compliments about his iconic red tie. Lily hesitated, sinking into her seat. But when her mother gave her a gentle nudge, she knew it was time. Her legs felt unsteady as she stood, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. The line felt endless, but as she inched forward, something changed. The murmurs of the crowd faded. People began to notice, the small girl holding tightly to her oversized Bible. Whispers spread as she approached the microphone. When her turn arrived, Trump looked down at her. For a brief moment, his expression softened. "And what's your question, young lady?" he asked, his voice surprisingly gentle. Lily swallowed hard, gripping her Bible until her knuckles turned white. Then, with a voice that trembled but refused to break, she asked the question that had echoed in her heart for months. "Mr. Trump, what does God mean to you?" The room fell silent. Completely. Eyes darted between the little girl and Trump, the weight of her words pressing on everyone like a tangible force. For a man known for his quick responses, Trump didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at her, then at the Bible she held. Something in his expression shifted. The air in the room felt thick with anticipation, drawing everyone to the edge of their seats. Trump's silence was deafening. A man who built his career on fast comebacks and unwavering confidence now stood speechless. He stared at Lily for a long moment, his bravado replaced by something softer, almost vulnerable. His gaze dropped to the Bible once more. His lips parted, but no words came. Lily shifted, looking even smaller under the collective gaze of the room. She hadn't asked to challenge or provoke. Her question was pure, rooted in a deep yearning to understand something greater than herself. And somehow, that sincerity spoke louder than any political speech ever could. The audience remained hushed. Even the sound of chairs creaking or someone clearing their throats seemed to disappear, as though the very air held its breath. Finally, Trump lifted his hand slightly as if steadying himself and leaned into the podium. "That's a big question," he said, his voice lower, steadier than usual. "And it's not one I've always had an answer for." The admission caught many off guard. Trump, known for his unwavering confidence, was admitting uncertainty. His eyes met Lily's once more, his tone shifting to something almost paternal. "When I was about your age," he continued, "I had a lot of questions about God too. My parents took me to church every Sunday. I'd sit in those pews, stare at the stained glass windows, and wonder, was God even listening to me? He paused, scanning the audience as if measuring their reaction. His fingers tapped lightly on the podium. My father used to tell me that faith is like a ladder. You climb it one step at a time. Sometimes you're afraid you'll fall, but you keep climbing because there's something up there worth reaching for. A faint chuckle rippled through the crowd, breaking the tension slightly. But Lily didn't laugh. She stayed focused, waiting for the real answer. Trump leaned forward. As I got older, life threw challenges my way. Losses. Failures. Moments when I wasn't sure if I could keep going. And in those times, I didn't always feel like God was there. Sometimes I was angry at him. Other times, I wondered if he had given up on me altogether. The crowd remained captivated. This wasn't the usual polished rhetoric. This was raw. Real. But I'll tell you this, Trump said, his voice firming up slightly. Even in my worst moments, when I felt the most alone, I learned that faith isn't about having all the answers. It's about believing that even when you can't see the whole picture, there's a purpose. There's something greater at work. He looked back at Lily. Her grip on the Bible had loosened. Her wide eyes shimmered under the fluorescent lights. And to me, he continued, God is that purpose. He's the reminder that even when we stumble, when we fail, we're not done. He's the one who keeps telling us to climb the ladder, even when it feels like it's breaking. Lily's eyes filled with tears. The room stirred with murmurs, sensing something extraordinary had just happened. Her mother placed a comforting hand on her back. It's okay, sweetheart, she whispered. But Lily shook her head. This wasn't sadness. It was something deeper. Trump's words had touched a part of her heart she hadn't realized needed healing. Trump stepped away from the podium, his expression uncharacteristically gentle. What's your name? He asked softly. Lily, she stammered. That's a beautiful name, he said with a faint smile. You know, Lily, sometimes the simplest questions are the hardest to answer. And sometimes they remind us of what really matters. Lily nodded, her tear-filled eyes never leaving his. My grandma used to say that too, she whispered. She said God is always listening, even when you don't hear him. Trump's expression flickered. Admiration. Understanding. He turned to the crowd. This little girl just asked a question most adults are too afraid to ask. What does God mean to us? It's not an easy question. It forces us to look inward, to face our fears, our doubts, and our flaws. For a moment, the town hall felt transformed, not just another political event, but a reflection on faith and humanity. And as the night continued, it was clear, this conversation was far from over.